At my daughter's birthday. She thanked only her mother-in-law and ignored me. I stayed silent as they cheered until I stood up, and my reaction stunned everyone. They had no idea what was coming next. My name is Meredith Shaw. I am 66 years old. I walked into Avery's house carrying a small box of cupcakes, expecting to be greeted with smiles. But instead, the room was already arranged around Marjorie. I expected the familiar mix of noise and warmth that usually fills a birthday gathering. But instead, I stepped into a room already arranged around one person, Marjorie, my former mother-in-law. She sat at the center of the dining table as if the celebration belonged to her. Avery rushed to her side, smoothing the shawl around Marjorie's shoulders. Everyone, before we eat, I want to thank the woman who shaped me, she began, lifting her glass. The woman who taught me how to be strong, how to carry myself, how to get through life. The guests murmured with admiration. All eyes traveled toward the center of the table. None of them landed on me. Avery's voice softened with devotion. I would not be who I am without you. You have been the mother I needed. The room erupted into applause. I stood at the doorway, still holding my cupcakes. The box suddenly heavier than it had been at home. No one looked over. No one paused long enough to wonder whether the woman who gave birth to Avery might also want to say something. A small, familiar ache settled beneath my ribs, the kind that comes from wounds reopened rather than newly made. Marjorie accepted the praise with a gracious smile, one hand resting lightly on Avery's arm. She had always known how to place herself in the exact middle of things. Tonight, she did not even need to try. My daughter had placed her there. I found my seat quietly, weighing my options. Responding now would change nothing, so I let the moment pass. Unnoticed by anyone but the chair itself, the voices swirled around me, laughter rising, glasses clinking, a celebration moving forward without space for me in it. As I set the cupcakes down, something inside me shifted, not anger, not yet, but the slow and painful recognition that this night was going to carve itself deeper than all the others. And it was only the beginning. I sat there at the edge of the table, letting the applause fade into the usual birthday chatter. But Avery's words kept echoing through me. They weren't new. They were only the latest cut in a lifetime of quiet wounds. When she was 22, during an argument about her moving out, she said, "Mom, you never understood me. You never even tried." She'd thrown the words out casually, like they were harmless. I carried them for years. A similar moment came years later, after she spent a weekend with Marjorie, long after I'd thought our bond was secure. She came home glowing in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child. "Marjorie gets me better than you ever have," she said, pulling off her coat. "She listens. She doesn't make everything heavy." I'd opened my mouth to respond, but the truth stuck in my throat. I was the one working double shifts, trying to keep us afloat. Listening had been a luxury I learned to steal in small, tired pieces. Tonight, as Avery leaned closer to Marjorie to whisper something, I felt that familiar sting trace the same old path along my ribs. Marjorie spoke without looking at me. "Avery, sweetheart, you handled everything so gracefully. You've always been wise beyond your years." Avery beamed. "I learned from you." I lowered my eyes to my hands. Years ago, when Avery was still in high school, I used to leave the hospice at dawn, my scrubs smelling of antiseptic and sorrow. I'd slip into the kitchen just in time to make her oatmeal before school. She didn't know about those mornings. She didn't know about the nights I slept in the staff lounge so I could pick up an extra shift and still get her textbooks. "Mom," Avery said suddenly, glancing at me, "you don't mind sitting there, right? Marjorie needs the chair near the heater." I nodded. Of course. Another small cut added to the many moments I had carried silently slid into place. I wondered how many a mother carried before something inside her finally opened and refused to close again. Marjorie had always known how to enter a room as if the air shifted to make space for her. Even now, at Avery's birthday dinner, She rested her hand lightly on Avery's arm, claiming her with a gesture that looked gentle to anyone who wasn't watching closely. "I told Avery the other day," Marjorie said, lifting her voice just enough for me to hear, "that resilience comes from having someone steady by your side. Someone who shows up emotionally." She gave a soft laugh. "Not everyone can offer that." Avery nodded without hesitation. "You've always been that person for me." I kept my hands folded in my lap. Years earlier, when Avery first started college, Marjorie had taken her out for brunch every Sunday. I'd been relieved at first, thinking Avery was building another support system. It wasn't until Avery came home one afternoon saying, "Marjorie listens better than you. She doesn't get so overwhelmed," that I understood something was shifting. Tonight, the shift felt complete. Marjorie leaned closer to Avery now. "I'm proud of who you've become. You grew into yourself beautifully." Avery smiled. "You helped me do that," referring to the confidence and poise Marjorie claimed credit for. Across the table, Marjorie looked at me briefly, her expression unreadable. Avery's always needed someone who sees her potential clearly. Some people parent out of fear, others out of confidence. The words slid across the table like a blade. I forced a breath. Avery's always had potential. I've known that since the day she was born. Marjorie tilted her head. "Of course you did, Meredith. But sometimes knowing isn't the same as nurturing." Avery touched Marjorie's hand, grateful for the comment. Bit by bit, year by year, Marjorie had rewritten her place in my daughter's life. And now, looking at them, I could see she believed the story she'd crafted. Avery did too. Dinner plates were being cleared when Marjorie rose from her seat with a theatrical little sigh. The kind meant to draw attention without looking like she wanted it. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a sleek velvet box. "Avery, darling," she said, her voice warm and trembling. "This is something I've saved for the right moment, and tonight felt perfect." Avery covered her mouth. "Marjorie, you didn't have to do anything else. The party is already enough." "Oh, sweetheart," Marjorie whispered, pressing the box into her hands. "A milestone deserves something meaningful." Avery opened it slowly. A diamond bracelet shimmered under the dining room lights, catching every breath in the room. Guests gasped. Someone behind me whispered, "That must have cost a fortune." Avery's eyes filled. "Marjorie, it's beautiful. I wanted you to have something worthy of the woman you've become," Marjorie said softly, "something that shows how proud I am." Applause broke out around us. People leaned forward to admire the bracelet, praising Marjorie's generosity. I sat very still. 3 months earlier, Avery had called me, her voice tight. "Mom, I'm short on something important. I promise I'll pay you back. I just need help covering the down payment." I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money the same night, Bucky. It wasn't a small amount. It came out of what little I'd saved over the last decade, mostly leftover from hospice overtime shifts. Avery never told me what the down payment was for. Now, watching her cradle the bracelet, I understood. Marjorie slipped it onto Avery's wrist. "It took a great deal to make this happen, but you're worth every bit of it." Avery threw her arms around her. Guests clapped louder. I swallowed hard. Weeks before, Avery had mentioned wanting a modest piece of jewelry, a simple gold pendant. Something meaningful but not extravagant. Something she and I had discussed together. But Marjorie had quietly changed the plan, taken my money, claimed the sacrifice, claimed the meaning. Avery held her wrist up to the light, glowing with gratitude. Marjorie smiled at me from across the table. The victory subtle but unmistakable. My love sat on my daughter's arm, shining under lights that weren't mine. The applause for the bracelet was still fading when Avery tapped her glass. "Before we cut the cake," she said, "I want to thank Marjorie again. She's been the anchor in my life, the one person who always shows up, My chest tightened. I felt something in me shift. The way ice cracks before it splits. Marjorie lowered her eyes modestly. Avery, darling, you don't have to thank me. But she enjoyed every syllable. I placed my napkin on the table and rose. My voice came out steady, almost too steady. I'd like to say something. Avery blinked. Mom, you don't need to. I know. I lifted my glass. But I will. A hush rolled across the room. Even the children in the living room quieted. I looked at Avery first. I'm glad you love the bracelet. It's beautiful and meaningful. Gifts like that usually are. I shifted my eyes to Marjorie. They're especially meaningful when sacrifices are involved. Marjorie's smile tightened. Well, yes. It took some effort, but it did, I said softly. Quite a lot of effort. Avery frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? I kept my gaze on her. 3 months ago, you called me because you were short on the down payment for something important. Avery's breath hitched. I transferred the money that night. I continued every bit of what I had saved. You said it was for something that mattered. Marjorie shifted in her chair. Meredith, this isn't the time I met her eyes. I didn't know the down payment was for a bracelet you'd later take credit for. The room froze. A woman near the end of the table whispered, Wait. What? Avery stared at the bracelet as if it had changed shape. Marjorie, is that true? Marjorie opened her mouth, closed it, then forced a laugh. This is being blown out of proportion. I don't want proportion, I said quietly. I want the truth. The silence that followed pressed against all of us. I lowered my glass. That's all. I sat down slowly, my pulse hammering under my skin. The truth was out, and there was no way to pull it back. I didn't want to. For a long moment, no one moved. The room felt stretched thin, like it could tear with one wrong breath. Then Aunt Lorna cleared her throat. Marjorie, honey, Meredith paid the down payment. Is that right? Marjorie straightened, her jaw tight. Well, I don't recall the exact details. There were conversations. Of course. But the bracelet was my gift. Uncle Ron leaned forward. But Avery asked Meredith for help. Didn't she? We all heard about that. Avery's cheeks flushed. I did. I told you I needed money for something important. Marjorie forced a smile. Yes, and I simply stepped in to help guide the purchase. That's not what you told me, Avery said slowly. You said you'd saved for years. Marjorie's eyes flickered. I meant I saved the idea, the intention. Someone at the far end muttered. That doesn't even make sense. Marjorie's composure cracked. All right, fine. Maybe Meredith contributed. But Avery needed someone reliable to actually make decisions. Avery stiffened. Reliable Marjorie turned toward her, panic edging her voice. Sweetheart, don't twist this. I've been the one who understands you. The one who fills in the spaces your mother couldn't. The guests shifted uncomfortably. I kept still, Avery whispered. Why didn't you tell me she paid for it because... Marjorie snapped. Losing control. If she were a good mother, you wouldn't need me. The words hit the table like something heavy and irreversible. Avery recoiled, as if slapped. Marjorie, why would you say that? Marjorie's lips parted, but nothing came. The room was silent except for Avery's uneven breath. Her gaze slid toward me, searching for something she couldn't name yet. The lie that held everything together had finally begun to split. Avery touched the bracelet with trembling fingers, then looked at me. Mom, can we talk alone? Marjorie reached out quickly. Avery, you don't need to rush into anything. Avery pulled her arm back. Please stop. Her voice cracked. Just stop. She led me into the hallway, away from Marjorie's gaze, needing a space where the truth could be spoken without interference. The voices from the dining room faded. leaving only the sharp quiet between us. Avery's eyes were rimmed with red. Why didn't you tell me you paid for it? Why didn't you say something when she took the credit? I took a slow breath. Because you seemed happy. And because I didn't want you trapped between two women trying to prove who loved you more. That's not fair, she whispered. You should have told me. There's a lot I should have told you. She swallowed hard. Then tell me now. So I did. I worked nights at the hospice for years. I said, not because I loved the hours. I did it because someone had to keep food on the table. When your father left, I didn't have a choice. I took every shift they offered. I slept in the staff lounge between double shifts so I could afford your textbooks. Avery's breath hitched. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. I didn't want your life weighed down by how hard mine was. But Marjorie said you were distant, that you didn't try. I was exhausted. I said softly, but I tried every day. Even when I had nothing left, I tried. Avery leaned against the wall, tears slipping down her cheeks. All these years, I thought she understood me better. I thought she cared more. She cared in her way. I said, but caring shouldn't require erasing someone else. Avery covered her mouth, a quiet sob escaping. Mom, I misjudged you. I reached for her hand. You saw what you were shown. Now you see more. When Avery and I stepped back into the dining room, the conversation had fallen into uneasy fragments. Marjorie stood near the table, her hands clasped tightly, masking panic with a brittle smile. Avery walked straight to her. Why did you say that? Her voice shook, but it was steady enough to cut through the room. Marjorie blinked rapidly. Sweetheart, I was upset. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You meant exactly what you said, Avery replied. You wanted me to see Mom as less. Why? Marjorie's expression hardened. Because she wasn't there the way you needed. I stepped in where she failed. I gave you stability. Avery's jaw tightened. She worked night after night to keep me afloat. You knew that. Marjorie lifted her chin. And still, you turned to me. You needed something she couldn't give. The room went still again. Avery swallowed. Did you ever tell me the truth about anything I guided you? Marjorie insisted. You were drawn to me because I understood you better. That's why you always called me first. Avery's face broke. I called you because you made me feel like Mom didn't want me, and I believed you. Marjorie stepped forward, reaching for her arm. Avery, don't do this. You and I. Avery pulled back sharply. No, you don't get to claim me after lying to me about my own mother. Marjorie's composure slipped. I gave you more than she ever did. Avery went pale. I saw the moment something inside her shifted. The moment the foundation she'd built around Marjorie finally collapsed. Avery turned away from her, breath trembling, and looked toward me instead. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. A soft knock woke me the next morning. I pulled my robe tighter and opened the door to find Avery standing on the porch. Eyes swollen, hair unbrushed, still wearing last night's coat. Mom, can I come in? I stepped aside without a word. She moved slowly to the kitchen table and sat down like she wasn't sure she deserved the chair. I didn't sleep, she whispered. I kept hearing everything you said, everything she said. I poured her a glass of water. Her hands shook as she took it. I'm sorry, Avery said suddenly, her voice cracking. Not just for last night, for years, for choosing the easier story, for believing she loved me more than you did. I sat across from her. It wasn't about choosing her over me. It was about what you needed then. No, Avery said firmly. I chose the person who praised me, the person who made me feel special, and I pushed away the one who carried me. Her eyes blurred. I don't know how I didn't see it. I reached for her hand. You saw what felt safe. Love can be loud or quiet. Hers was loud. Mine Wasn't. Avery let out a breath that sounded like a crack in her chest. Mom, I want to fix this. I want to rebuild what I broke, but I don't know where to start. I squeezed her hand gently. You start by sitting here, by showing up. That's more than enough. She covered her face and cried openly, the kind of cry that came from finally letting go of years of something heavy. When she lifted her head, her voice was soft, but steady. I don't want to lose you again. I held her hand tighter. You're here now. That's the beginning. 1 month later, Avery asked me to come over early. When I walked in, the house was quiet. No crowd, no decorations. Just a small table set with 2 plates and a single candle. It's not a big party, she said, smoothing her dress nervously. I didn't want noise this time. I wanted truth. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Avery opened it to a handful of close relatives, Aunt Lorna, Uncle Ron, her cousin Megan. No Marjorie. Avery stepped into the center of the room. Thank you all for coming. I wanted tonight to be different from last month. She looked at me, her voice steadying. I want to honor the person who should have been honored all along. The room went still. Avery reached for my hand. Everything good in me came from my mother, Meredith Shaw. She worked nights. She sacrificed more than I ever understood. And she never asked for credit. My throat tightened. Avery picked up a small velvet box, the same one Marjorie had opened with such flourish. She held it toward me. This bracelet isn't mine, she said. It was bought with your money, your effort, your love. It belongs to you. I hesitated, but she pressed it gently into my palm. Please, Mom, let me give back what I took for granted. The guests watched quietly. Respectful, not pitying, not awkward, just present. I opened the box. The bracelet still glittered under the lights, but tonight it didn't feel like a symbol of loss. It felt like closure. Avery exhaled shakily. I'm not asking to erase what happened. I'm asking to build something better. I pulled her into my arms. Her shoulders shook as she whispered, I won't choose anyone over you again. For the first time in years, I believed her. Realizing who truly supports us can take years. Have you ever seen the one you overlooked? Share your story in the comments. And let's celebrate quiet strength.